The bloom is of the rose. This is a principle that applies to each and every one of you. So I wanted to shoot this video to tell you how you can benefit from this great analogy. So the bloom is of the rose means that something looks a lot better when you see it initially. Something looks a lot better when you experience it initially than perhaps 2 years later, 5 years later, once you've done it already 100 times, 1,000 times, and you are tired of it, right? You don't get the same buzz out of it anymore. And so the bloom is of the rose applies to you, it applies to me, it applies to your sisters, it applies to your brothers, your fathers, your mothers, your business partners, your wives, your husbands, your acquaintances, whoever. It applies to every one of us. And it's a very powerful analogy. And so many of us could be doing so much better if we benefited from this analogy the right way. And let me tell you what I mean by this. Let me give an example. Examples work very well. So many people, and also so many of you who are on this channel, you want to travel to Southeast Asia because you have a certain expectation of the life Southeast Asia offers you. At least that's what you perceive. It's your perception. However, perception may end up being reality or may not end up being reality 2 years later. It may end up being reality in the short term. It always depends. Let's say you want to move to Southeast Asia and everything is shiny, everything is brilliant looking, and so you believe that Southeast Asia is all about that. Here's my disclaimer. Southeast Asia is fantastic, and there are many positives in Southeast Asia. The kind of life you can live is phenomenal. The ultra low cost of living, the cheap services you can obtain, potentially great tax benefits when living in the region. You have all these amazing perks to access once you're there. There's no question about that. It's a great region. I still love it. I still miss my time in Southeast Asia. It was by far the best time of my life. And I say this over and over and over again because it's true. It's just true. What's important here is that when you go there, right, when you've never been there, there is this whole excitement. Let me give an example. You sit down to have Vietnamese noodle soup for the first time, right? You arrive in Ho Chi Minh City. First night you go out with your friends who you've met online or potentially with your new girlfriend who happens to be Vietnamese, and you end up, at the food court where you have some Vietnamese pho, some noodle soup, right? And the first time you have this experience, it's truly amazing and it's truly unbelievable because the same moment that you have right now, right? The same moment that you're in right now, you may never have again, like how you feel about the place because you've traveled potentially for a whole day or half a day, depending on where you started, or you have waited for months or even years before you could realize this very same experience and this very unique experience. When you sit down to have this pho noodle soup, it is truly a life-changing and unique experience because the whole atmosphere, right? The whole gratification, right? The whole gratification is something that you may never have again. And the moment you are in this moment, right? When you experience something for the first time that is so different than anything you've experienced before, you get such an emotional high. And the high is very comparable to the high that you get when you are on, for instance, cocaine, or the high that you get when you're on a different drug, right? The first time you have that, it's very different than when you have it the second time, the third time. And so it's a very unique moment for you. And so because of that, it is very, very powerful. It's very inspirational. It's very fulfilling, especially if you had to wait for months or even years before you could finally realize this truly unique experience. When you do something the second time, the third time, the fourth time, it changes how you feel about it, right? Your feelings towards something just changes, right? But the first time, the very first time, your brain releases the most dopamine possible. There's really very few things that can be compared to that emotional high that you get. And this emotional high, right, which is the result of the dopamine your brain releases, can be experienced for a bunch of different things, right? Very unique experiences, drugs, sex, a lot of different things. It's very powerful. And so you gotta know how to use that to motivate yourself, right? To increase your self-initiative and funnel your self-initiative towards the things that you wanna accomplish in your life. Very important lesson. But the following thing happens. And again, it's all about the bloom is of the rose. And once you did something multiple times, it becomes more like a pattern. It becomes more like a habit. The more you do it, you do it every day 3 or 4 times. After time, it feels less and less gratifying, right? You feel less satisfied after you do it. And that's because it's no longer new, right? And there is already a pattern, right? Your brain has already set this expectation because your brain already knows what the response is going to be from this particular task or this particular place, drug, activity, whatever you're doing. Your brain has the expectation, so it becomes less emotionally gratifying. It's a very important lesson, very important lesson. And so oftentimes, right, we use this, beautiful picture of a place we want to try out, we want to move to. Potentially, we want to start a business. We are looking for the love of our life. Very positive things, right? Things that encourage us to do more. Things that encourage us to put in more work. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually great. It's a super catalyst to achieve the things that you want to achieve, right? The goals, the vision is an engine. It can be used as an engine. It just works. It works very well. But so often we get to this point in life when we have accomplished what we wanted to accomplish because we were so driven by this outcome, by this feeling, by this, expectation that once we have it, our reality changes again. And this is what life is all about. And we've been talking about this on the channel a lot. It's all about, what you want to get out of life. And life is all about cycles. Depends on what cycle you're in your life. What's the next cycle that you want to reach? Ask yourself that question. And that's how you can motivate yourself to take action to achieve this next cycle. Very, very important lesson. But oftentimes, and that's the whole learning experience here too, the whole learning lesson, what you want to focus on is not just, the good stuff that you will achieve, which no doubt you will achieve. And that's fantastic because that's what we want. Who wants to think about the bad things that can happen, right? And we don't want to think about that. But as the quote goes, be prepared for the worst. You want to be prepared for the worst. And it's important because if you set your expectations super high or as high as possible, and this is the only acceptable medium for you, the only acceptable outcome, guess what happens when you don't reach it? You're going to put yourself down, you're going to be disappointed, you're going to be upset, right? You don't have too many positive emotions inside of you. Now, I'm not trying to say that you should set your expectations super low. That's also not good because when you set your expectations super low, you may not reach greater potential. So you don't want that either. But I'm trying to show you that what you ultimately want is a healthier relationship with your expectations. Because once you have this healthier relationship with your expectations, oftentimes, no matter what comes your way, you will find a solution. You will find a way on how to deal with it. It's a super, super important lesson. And so somebody wanting to go to Asia to experience all the good stuff will likely experience all the good stuff there. However, they will also likely experience some of the bad things, right? Because it's part of life. It's part of life. Super important to think about that and accept it. Because once you're in a state of acceptance, you are less likely to act in a very emotional way that harms you. Short term, mid-term, long term, doesn't matter. Really think about this. It's a super, 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 super important point here. And so when you go to Asia, have this expectation that yes, good things will happen, but also bad things will happen eventually. And we're seeing this all the time of expats who have spent years pursuing an online relationship in the hope that it will lead to marriage, that it will lead to a family. And you know what? That is fantastic. You want to have these goals. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But have a clear plan because you don't want to be driven just by the emotion, ignoring the important details. You know, don't trust people blindly, especially when it comes to online dating, especially when it comes to people who you don't know. And you probably don't know a person unless you've spent at least a year with that person. And the proof is all over the place. Why? People change, right? Circumstance forces people to change in different ways, but it all depends on where we're at in life. And so you really want to be as prepared as possible for all kinds of outcomes. And that really helps you understand how you should react. And that's the most important thing of all. Make sure that you know how to react. It's just such an important lesson. And the bloom is of the rose also means that, and again, we have already talked about this, once you have passed the initial state of excitement, once you have realized your initial dreams, you know, they've come to fruition, you know, things change. Things change. Because things don't appear so shiny anymore, they don't appear so golden anymore, and that change can come in many different ways. It can come in a way that you're not prepared to handle it. It's true. The change can show up in all kinds of different shapes, forms, sizes, colors. You know, it can last for long term, it can last for short term, all depends. But be prepared for it, because the initial time that you have in a new place is limited. It is limited. You may never have the same moment that you have right now in a new place ever again. Ever again. It may never be again the same. It just can't, because how you were prepared for it and the expectations that you had and the emotional goals that you had, you know, because that's what it's all about. We do things because we expect a certain response. We expect a certain feeling. And oftentimes we don't feel too good about life. We don't feel too good about other people or even us. And so we are doing the things, or we're thinking about the things, you know, when we're taking action that will get us to greater things in life. And that's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, you have to understand that certain things don't last forever. All good things come to an end. All good things come to an end. They always do. And that doesn't mean that no new good things will start. They always do too, right? They always do too. And so this is just a learning lesson, which you will eventually have through experience. And some of you already had it, or many of you already had it, and you will have it again and again and again. And so this is something that I had to learn the hard way, and most of us have to learn the hard way. And our expectation towards something changes over time as well. And how we look at things also, you know, everything changes over time. Like our perception changes, our motives change, you know, our priorities in life, they change. Our comfort zone changes too, right? And so with these different adjustments, you know, we just don't feel the same about a place, a person, something anymore. And that's fine too. Anyway, now that we got this out of the way, the bloom is of the rose eventually. And the bloom might be of the rose in your life very soon. Let me know your thoughts. Leave a comment below. A big, big, big thank you to my mentor. Without him, I'd not be where I'm at in my life today. And I am fortunate to have one of the best, one of the most supportive, the most genuine, and the most caring mentors of all. I'm not going to reveal his name, but thank you for everything you've done for me and with me, and I appreciate it today, tomorrow, and forever. Subscribe now and turn on alerts to never miss any of my future nomadism, dating, and business advice videos. Thank you for watching.